So I'm starting this video with a small joke, so guys, don't take it out of context. I did not get bad news from the doctor. Alright, so here goes. Joe went to the doctor and got some really bad news from the doctor. The doctor told him that he only has 6 months more to live and should give up wine, women, and cigarettes. So Joe asked if that would make him live longer. To which the doctor replied, no, but it will definitely seem like it. So a week ago, Sonos dropped version 14.15, but it was just an update to only the app. It was meant to enable the addition of the upcoming Sub Mini to the system. Now the firmware on all the speakers, they were still at 14.14. Now as of 10 p.m. Singapore time last night, almost about 24 hours ago, Tuesday, as expected, they dropped 14.16. Now, I did not get to test it last night, but I managed to test it just after work today. And now, there's this note from Sonos on the announcement thread where they previously acknowledged the issue with the Sonos Sub having reduced output on Trueplay when Trueplay is turned on. Now, they're saying that this update is going to be slightly disappointing in that they have not yet fixed that issue with this release 14.16. So I've got both good news and bad news when it comes to Sonos version 14.16. Now you can say that this is kind of like my upfront summary for you. Sonos version 14.16 did not fix the issue with the sub's decreased output when Trueplay is being turned on. But the good news is that the workaround of turning off Trueplay, it still works to help restore the bass to the subwoofer. Now, I was actually quite hopeful because the update to 14.16 took so long, but kind of the hopes were kind of dashed because they didn't ask me to redo Trueplay after the update was done. But I did observe a slight improvement in the overall response with 14.16 throughout the entire frequency range, and that includes the bass output. Now, to be clear, the subwoofer output is still being suppressed, but there is a small happy surprise here, which I will get to in a bit when I get to the frequency response charts. Now, the drop of the next software release will likely be another month from now, so that's going to be quite a bit of waiting. So you can be like Joe and keep moping about the same problem, and this entire month will seem like an eternity. Or you could follow the doctor's advice, turn off Trueplay and still bask in the glorious bass from the subwoofer if you have one attached to your Sonos Ray or your Beam or your Sonos Arc. And the next 4 weeks will likely feel a whole lot faster. So should you upgrade? Yeah, sure, why not, right? It won't get any worse. But on the other hand, you might be thinking, upgrade for what? Not that it does anything significant for the subwoofer response. Sonos has not updated any release notes on their website as I last checked a couple of hours ago. Not that there are any notable features on this version of 14.16 either, but, all right, there is a small improvement in the sound signature, which I will show you in just a little bit. Now, if you're going to be buying the Sonos Sub Mini anyway, do consider upgrading the software, because when the Sub Mini arrives at your door and you set it up in your system, you will need to update in that case. And you don't want to wait around any longer than necessary, so update the rest of your system to 14.16. It won't do any harm. Now, let's get to the frequency response test, all right? So what I'm going to show you is the first blue curve, all right? If I were to open up this blue curve here, all right, so the first blue curve here is done with the Sonos Arc with the sub Trueplay turned off using 14.14. Now, in the next curve that I'm going to be pulling up, and that's the one in green, this is the same 14.14. It shows how Trueplay broke the sub, reducing the output in the subwoofer's output tremendously in the lower bass region. And that same test is done 14.14, Trueplay turned on with green. So you can see this whole drop here. Now with Sonos S2 released last night for 14.16, I did another frequency response sweep. And this is what I got out of it. All right, so turning on the yellow curve. Now, is to show that the frequency response for 14.16 without Trueplay turned on is very similar to the blue curve with 14.14. So for clarity, I will actually turn this yellow curve off so you will see the blue curve still, right? Now the next curve, I'm going to be loading up the red curve. You will see that, here, right? On the sonic front, there's actually a very subtle change. Now, note that this is using the same Trueplay profile. They did not ask me to redo Trueplay, moving from 14.14 to 14.16. Now, the first thing to note is that the bass is still being reduced in the lower region. So if the Trueplay is supposed to be working properly and the subwoofer is working properly, this should be the kind of output that you're expecting. But it is not there, right? When you turn on Trueplay, that region, that whole bass output from the subwoofer has been cut off. Now, I'd like to show you something in more clarity, but before we do that, let me remove the non-Trueplay curve so it's easier for me to show what I mean. So let me take away the non-Trueplay curve. So what you see here, they are both Trueplay enabled. One is 14.14 in green and the other is 14.16 in red, right? So you will see that throughout the most parts of the curves, there is a very subtle uplift in the frequency response. And the bass output actually does seem to be lifted slightly, especially below the 110, 120 hertz region or so. Now, this is an interesting observation. Even the mid-range and the treble right up to about 7 kilohertz or so has a slightly improved response. Now, Sonos has not published any release notes like I told you earlier, so I can't even tell what has changed in this release. But at least they have acknowledged the problem and told us that they're still working on the problem, not just forgotten about it. So while most of the world is bashing this particular update right now, from the 14.12 to 14.14 and even now at 14.16, which still has that reduced subwoofer output when you turn on Trueplay, what is the good that has come out of this update? Now, for one, there is an extended soundstage and the dialogue is actually cleaner and clearer. Now, this is as compared to 14.10. There was actually a very good improvement that came out with the update from 14.10 to 14.12. If your room is acoustically terrible, turning Trueplay on becomes essential. But if bass is of great importance and value to you, then just consider turning off Trueplay for now and you will be able to get back your subwoofer bass response. So what can you do now? Just forget about using Trueplay for now. Follow the doctor's advice. Make your life easier. Make it easier on yourself. Stop mopping around this problem and just enjoy the soundbar with the subwoofer without Trueplay turned on. Just subscribe to the channel, ring the notification bell, and I will let you know as soon as they release the fix to this problem. And you know what? Not everybody has this problem also. Android users, right? If I look at my viewership, about 38% of you guys are Android users out of the entire Sonos user base. I would say that this doesn't present a problem to you at all because it only affects users of Sonos soundbar with a sub and that you want to turn on Trueplay. And to turn on Trueplay, you require an iOS device. So for iOS users, with that option, this becomes a problem for you. So for the Android users out there, they are still enjoying the soundbar as it is. If they can do it, so can you. So this is really a problem with iOS. There's a good percentage of users out there living without Trueplay that is still enjoying the sub as it should. But then again, this was a feature that was sold and maybe we bought it because we have iOS devices. So it should be fixed. I'm not saying that it shouldn't be fixed, it cannot be fixed, and Sonos is not responsible for it. But if you suddenly just refuse to turn off Trueplay and keep insisting that the bass is broken, then you just live with the fact. There is a way to get around this issue right now before they release the fix, and that is to turn off Trueplay. Now, it is not that Apple and their iPhones never had any major issues. There was a time I remember, I think it was my iPhone 7, it couldn't receive any incoming calls. The worst part is that the caller, when they're calling you, they actually hear the ringtone. So they'll just think that you are ignoring them, right? Just that on the phone itself, there's no indication of an incoming call at all, not even registered on the missed call, right? The telco signal bars were strong. Now, that, to me, is a major issue. It completely breaks the phone without a workaround. Now, that is a key functionality of the phone. It's not like the voice wasn't clear or the voice had a weak bass or a strange wobbly sound. There was no incoming calls at all. Now, I got the phone replaced. I called up Apple and, or maybe it was Singtel at that point in time. I can't remember. But because I backed it up with the iOS version that was causing the problem, when I got the replacement phone, I had to upgrade to the same iOS version in order to restore, right? And when I backed it up to the same version, the problem came back again. So I had to replace the phone again because you can't downgrade the version. And I had to use the phone without updating the software. So I had to change the phone twice, right? It meant to say I had to set up the phone as a new phone, which is why if you look at my phone, the photos will date back all the way to, I think, 2016, and that's about as far back as it goes. Everything else before that is all gone, right? Sure, I could have restored it after I got the whole thing upgraded, but I just got lazy. I exported everything using iPhotos back then and archived them. So the resolution wasn't for them to replace the phone. Even after they replaced the phone twice, it didn't solve the problem. I just had to patiently wait for the software to be patched to resolve the issue so that I can use the phone for its main functionality of a phone, right? All right, so let's talk about some conspiracy theories that are out there. Now, one of the theories that's been floating around is that Sonos nerfed the Sub Gen 3 in order to sell more of the newly released Sub Mini. Now, think of it for a moment. Why would they do that? I don't think they are a Mickey Mouse company. Why would they resort to such an underhand tactic to sell more Sub Minis? Now, even if they were underhand about that, all right, it is not that the Mini is a more expensive product. Why would they want to nerf the more expensive product, the Sub Gen 3, to give them more revenue from the Sub Mini? Because the Sub Mini won't give them more revenue. So I really don't think this is the reason. Now, the other thing that I've heard people talk about on the internet is that they were prioritizing the Sub Mini before fixing this. Now, again, why would they? They would make less on the Sub Mini. The Sub Mini costs more, $429 versus this is like $799. And the Sub Mini can't pair in a dual sub setup. So if they really wanted to make more money from the Sub Mini, why don't they just let you pair two Sub Minis together or even four Sub Minis? How about that? Why nerf the performance of the Sub Gen 3? And bear in mind, the Sub Mini development wasn't done in the last 2 months. It was ready long before 14.12 was released 2 months ago. Now, in fact, production would have started months before this. Now, if they still had to resort to rush out developing the software and the firmware for the Sub Mini within the last 2 months, then the Sub Mini wouldn't have made it to the September 13 announcement and definitely won't be in your hands and available by the 6th of October next month. So I won't be entertaining any more of these conspiracy theories of why they nerfed the Sub anymore, because I see really no good reason why they would do that. It's like they didn't nerf the Sonos Arc, right, when they released the Beam Gen 2. And they definitely didn't nerf the Beam Gen 2 when they released the Sonos Ray. And furthermore, if they were really to nerf the Sub Gen 3, why nerf it only for Trueplay? They would have just cut the output outright with and without Trueplay so that all the Android users are affected, so that there's no workaround and you have no choice but to buy the Sub Mini to replace the Sub Gen 3. But either way, it just won't make economic sense for them to do so. But what I like to support is the theory why they have not managed to fix the Sub Gen 3 issue with Trueplay yet. So typically for any software development cycles, you don't think of a feature today and you start coding for it tomorrow. You have to plan for it. You have to assign the story points to the sprints or the development cycles of the team. So my assumption is that for the 14.14 and the 14.16 release cycles, they actually had it planned months before, right? Before the 14.12 issues came up. And incidentally, they also had to incorporate the changes required for the Sub Mini. They didn't decide last month to launch the Sub Mini in September, to announce in September and to release in October. They planned it months ago. So if you follow the software release cycle, then maybe 14.18 will have a very good chance of the fix making its way into that October release. And come think about it, Sonos has been pretty regimental in their software release in 2022, and that kind of gives me some comfort. So prior to 2022, their software release was unpredictable and they dropped whenever they felt like it. So with Sonos publicly coming out and admitting that they have not solved the problem with 14.16, and that's even before they dropped the software, and the next release is going to be timely as proven over the entire 2022 so far, I am pretty assured that they will be allowing me to make the video Sonos Trueplay fix for the sub right about this day next month. And this time round, the one thing that Sonos has done well is to communicate clearly. I was quite heartened by the fact that they actually made a post before the version 14.16 drop, warning us that it won't contain the fix yet. I think it goes a long way to them being transparent, and that's something that I really appreciate, which I think you should appreciate Sonos for doing as well. Now, I recognize that this video might come across as me defending Sonos a little bit too much. Now, I have no shame in doing so and admitting that. I really do like the company, and it is my own opinions to which you may not agree with. Now, it has not always been a love relationship with Sonos, So I've lived through the initial days of the Sonos Arc launch. It was the most expensive Sonos product at that point in time. And in fact, this channel was actually born out of the fact that there was a problem with the Sonos Arc at launch. But I do not forget joyous times, right? Times when they release great hardware like the Sonos Sub Mini or the Sonos Amp, right? When they allowed for, how about the dual sub implementation with the Sub Gen 3? Or when they allow us to tune the height channel volume, right? As with any company, I think we just have to take the bad with the good. Just don't forget about the good times. And talking about good times, some of you will be getting the Sub Mini very soon. I'll put a video about the Sub Mini, the review, right here, if the review is ready by the time you watch this video. As of today, not yet. If it is not there, I would put a video about the secrets of the Sub Mini that might help you scratch that itch before you get your Sub Mini. Now, either way, I will see you in that video.